Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I want to say congratulations to all my classmates who have done a wonderful job so far. And as mentioned, my name is Jamal Galves, and today I'll be sharing with you my master's capstone project entitled Safeguarding the Critical Coastal Habitats for the Endangered Antillean Manatees of Belize. I dedicated my master's work, to my colleague and friend, Vivian Ramnares, who had passed away earlier this year. So where is Belize? Just for those of you who may not know, Belize is located in Central America. It's the only English-speaking Central American country, and it's also in the Caribbean. It's the only country that's both Central America and the Caribbean. Belize is also special as it's known for the home of the largest population of the Antillean manatees in the world. Population estimates to be around 1,600 individuals. But these species, though we have the largest population, they're considered endangered, and they're protected under IUCN Red List, CITES species. Regionally, they're protected under the SPA Protocol, and in Belize, they're protected under the National Fisheries Resource Act. But despite being protected, these animals are bombarded by a large number of threats, mainly anthropogenic. The reason why manatees are endangered today is as a result of hunting pressures, but that has been replaced by the likes of watercraft collision, destruction of coastal habitats, entanglement in fishing gears, garbage pollution, and climate change. Over the years, we've looked at manatee stranding and deaths. I take no joy in sharing this photograph, but it's the reality of these species, the fight that they're facing, and we need people to understand what these animals are going through. But you'll note that since 2012, there has been an increasing trend as it relates to manatee stranding. This is also the year when the tourism industry in Belize also started to boom. In 2016, however, there was a slight decline. That is an account of a project through the Conservation Leadership Program Award, which I had won, that had a year of work that focused on a specific space that had high manatee mortality. But you'll note the year after the project closed, the trend continued in its normal way. However, in 2020 and 2021, COVID-19 came and we saw a decrease again. But once COVID-19, once the pandemic was over, you saw that the increasing trend begins again. Belize is Mother Nature's best kept secret, not so much a secret anymore, as tourists flock to Belize to enjoy the wonders of this paradise that we tend to call home. However, that this paradise that we tend to call home and the increasing number of tourism had led to increasing development to accommodate the increase in tourism. Unfortunately, those development put these same area that we boast and enjoy about at risk. Currently, there are proposals for 3 cruise ship ports, less than 15 miles from each other, and in close proximity to the area that accounts for over 70% of the country's manatee deaths already, without these ports there. And this is a potential reality. When you look at Florida and look at the impact caused on the species as a result of ecosystem destruction, in the last year or so, over 1,000 manatees have died in Florida due to lack of ideal habitat, lack of food, starvation. We're hoping to take these as lessons to put our best foot forward to ensure that we do not end up in this situation. So the overall goal of my project is to utilize manatees as a flagship species to protect critical coastal habitats in Belize for the benefit of not just wildlife, but for also human livelihoods. My first objective is to determine the amount of manatees and their habitat at risk. We start by doing this. I was fortunate to be a part of a really important project which looked at the regional population estimate in partnership with Mexico and Guatemala, where we did an abundance estimate for Belize, which is one of the first true abundance estimate, which resulted in us determining that there's approximately 1,600 manatees across the coast of Belize, and we were able to identify areas that had high density of manatees, specifically Belize City, Southern Lagoon, North Stann Creek, Placencia Lagoon, And these are the 4 areas that we note that had high density of manatees. But of note, areas such as Port Honduras Marine Reserve also had increasing numbers that we've seen over the years on the Trinidad Atoll. We can't protect a species without protect where they live. Manatees are dependent on their ecosystems, and one of the ideal ecosystems for manatees are mangrove. So where are manatees in relation to mangrove? We basically took a mangrove GIS layer and overlaid that with manatee density data to determine where these animals are in relation to these specific ecosystems. And again, Belize City showed high density of manatees, Southern Lagoon, North Stand Creek, and the Placencia Lagoon area. And this area also has healthy and high density mangrove. We look at seagrass, which is the ideal diet for ideal food for manatees. And where are manatees in relation to these things? And again, Belize City, Southern Lagoon, North Stand Creek, and Placencia. You're starting to see a trend here now. I then looked at where are manatees in relation to marine and coastal protected space to understand, to really get an understanding of the risk that these animals are facing. Belize has over, I think, 24 marine and coastal protected space. And many of these are designated protected space for numerous reasons, not specifically for manatees. But where are these animals in relation to these protected space? And you note the high density area, Belize City, is outside of a protected space. Southern Lagoon is a protected space. North Stand Creek, Placencia Lagoon. Of the 4 most important area in terms of high density, only one of this area has protection, and that's Southern Lagoon. So 30% of the country's population are inside a protected area, while a whopping 70% are outside of a protected area. This brings concern for a species that is already considered endangered. But I wanted to focus more on protected areas that are designated specifically for the protection of manatees. There are currently 3 areas in the country that looks after manatees: the Corozal Bay Wildlife Sanctuary in the north, the Swallow Key Wildlife Sanctuary in the central Belize, and the Southern Lagoon. And of note, 10.4% were found inside these designated protected space. And the highest density within the 3 protected space was found in Southern Lagoon. While Belize City, which has high density again, lacks protection, North Stand Creek, and the Placencia Lagoon. So these 3 areas are areas with high density, but are outside of any level of protection. And then we wanted to focus on where are these animals in relation to the risk that they're facing. And we narrowed down the risk to boating and habitat destruction. Habitat destruction include mangrove clearing, dredging as well, as those are the 2 most critical threats that we're seeing. And here you'll note that I overlaid the mangrove habitat and the seagrass habitat, while we combine the boating and habitat destruction to look at the risk. The purple shaded area are areas that presents risk. And you note that risk is present across the entire coastline of Belize, even in marine protected space. But where are these risks in relation to high manatee density? Again, Belize City has high risk, high manatee density, ideal habitat, and no protection. So is North Stand Creek, and so is Placencia Lagoon area. The only area that has protection and little risk that manatees have high density is the Southern Lagoon area. I also wanted to look at where manatees are in relation to all this stranding data and the threat. When you looked at stranding in itself, you'll note here that Belize City has 76% of the country's stranding, while the Placencia Lagoon has 13%. When I take you over to the right here, when you look at specifically incidents where manatees are harmed by boats, 79% of these incidents occur in Belize City. This is an area that lacks protection and have high density of manatees, followed by the Placencia Lagoon. So what percent of the population is at risk? We looked at it in specific as it relates to dredging and coastal development, where 22% of the population is at risk. When you look at the combination of dredging and coastal development, 6.1%, and the total risk brought by dredging and coastal development is 28%. When you focus on boating, we mainly focus on recreational and marine transport. And you'll note that it's a 56.5% of these animals are at risk from boating activities. However, when you combine the two threats, development and boating, 0.2% of these animals show to be at risk. Objective 2 is to identify manatee habitat at risk that should be prioritized for spatial protection. So when you looked at that, what we basically did was look at the area that had high density manatee, ideal manatee habitats, risks, and lack protection. So we looked at this and we note that currently only 10.4% of the country's population are within a protected space that is designated for the protection of manatees. But if we should protect the Belize City, Belize remote area, which has high density, has high risk, and have ideal habitat, we would be protecting another 8.4% of the country's species. And if we should add the Northern Creek to that, we will be protecting another 6.8% of the country's population. And third, the Placentia Lagoon area. By protecting the Placentia Lagoon area, we will be protecting another 4.4% of the country's population. So totally, we will be protecting 21% total of the country's population additionally. But when you look at the other 10.4%, we would have protection for a total of 31% of the country's population should we consider and should the government approve the protection of these specific space. And that is not still gratifying, as I believe that these animals require more protection, but 31% is a start. And it's a good way of us to start to see the population rebound. As I mentioned, Belize has the last stronghold on this population, and the efforts in Belize is critical, not just for Belize, but for the species on a global scale. And we're hoping that the work in Belize that is being done will be sufficient to make countries whose numbers have dwindled to rise, or countries that once had this species that no longer has it anymore to rebound. So we took a look at the Pareto accumulation curve, which maps the fraction of manatee population protected. And you'll note that manatees are highly aggregated species, and so it requires a small protection for a small area to protect a large number of species. So we're not asking a lot. So currently, a small fraction of manatee habitat, just 14%, contains 75% of the country's population. So when you look at protecting these three small proposed areas, it's only 2.1% of manatee habitat we're asking for protection. But that will return at 21% of the country's population being protected. I'm fortunate that my project is aligned and the opportunities that I've brought to light. Belize has recently signed on to a blue bond with the Nature Conservancy, which would see at the completion of this bond, a total of 30% of Belize's marine and coastal space being protected. I am fortunate that the government of Belize, through the Coastal Zone Management and Authority, have agreed to partner with me and to utilize the findings of this capstone studies to be incorporated within Belize Sustainable Ocean Plan and to be a guide on determining what additional space will be considered for protection. My deliverables is a manuscript which would be out for publication once the work is finalized. Draft cabinet white paper, which I'll be presenting to the government of Belize, proposing for the protection of these important areas for the species, and the result to be incorporated within the Belize Sustainable Ocean Plan. Potential actions. The results of my Capstone project will be incorporated, as I mentioned, within the Belize Sustainable Ocean Plan, and we'll have 3 additional protected space for manatees, which I believe would be significant for the survival of the species. So what's next? I know my colleagues are in the back hoping that I'll see a PhD, but what next is for me to spend some time with my little daughter and start to train her to become the next manatee conservationist. But then I still have work to do. I'll continue to work on my manuscript for publication. I'll complete the white paper along with my advisors and universities and partners to be presented to the government of Belize, and I'll continue to work with the Coastal Zone Management and Authority, whom I was appointed to be a part of a working group that will see the Marine Spatial Plan through. I'll continue to utilize not just my capstone studies, but the knowledge gain and experience partnership that I've gained throughout this program. And use and to bring it back to Belize to be targeted for the protection of manatees and coastal protection. Grateful is a word that comes to mind when I think about all the people that have supported me. From a young 11-year-old kid wanting to protect the species, coming from a small coastal community to where I am now. There's no amount of thank you that I can give to every single person, colleague, organization, individuals that have supported, funded, directed, offered advice in more ways than another. I cannot imagine that from where I was to where I am now, there's no amount of thank you that I can give to the university, to my advisors, to the staff, and grateful is the only word that can come to mind when I speak about these individuals that have been a part of this, my capstone partner, my organization, Clearwater Marine Aquarium, who have stood with me the entire way, have allowed me to come to the university, my colleagues who have held over in my absence to ensure that the work continues, the coastal zone, the fisheries department, WSCS, I am extremely grateful. My advisors, I cannot have done this without you. I thank you for pushing me every single step of the way. When I wanted to be comfortable and to do less, you guys pushed me to do more. At the MARM, I'm extremely, extremely grateful to you. Kelly, you are a fundamental part of my project. I am appreciate. Dr. Pete, your advice has been tremendous. Along with Don, you've been of good guidance. Dr. Mari, who have been on my shoulders everywhere to sort of push and to do more. I am extremely grateful. Everybody, I want to acknowledge people who have supported me along this way in more ways than one. I am thankful, and my classmates who have made this journey a fun and a smooth one. And I'll say thank you. And I'm glad to take any questions you may have.